Hello, everyone. We're delighted to have you join us for today's session of ACB Connects. I'm Beth Steele, President-elect of the Association of Concert Bands, known as ACB, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the first of a new series called ACB Conversations. These sessions are sponsored by the Association of Concert Bands as an international nonprofit organization whose mission is to foster excellence in concert band music through performance, education, and advocacy. Today, we recognize the birthday of the United States Marine Band 223 years ago today. Established by an act of Congress in 1798, the United States Marine Band is America's oldest continuously active professional music organization. Its mission is unique: to provide music for the President of the United States and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. On July 11th, 1798, in the nation's capital of Philadelphia, President John Adams signed an act of Congress establishing the United States Marine Band. The original 32 drummers and fifers assisted in recruiting Marines and entertained residents. It was later, in August of 1800, the Marine Band presented its first public concert in Washington on a hill overlooking the Potomac, near the future site of the Lincoln Memorial. We have just a few housekeeping notes before we start today. Today's session is being recorded and will be archived along with other previously recorded sessions on the ACB Connects page on the ACB website. We welcome your questions. If you have any questions or comments for our guests, please submit them in the chat addressed to everyone, and we will address as many as possible as time allows. With us today is Colonel Jason Fettig, the 28th director of the President's owned United States Marine Band. He joined the band in 1997 as a clarinetist and soon became a frequently featured soloist. As director, Colonel Fettig is the music advisor to the White House and regularly conducts the Marine Band and Marine Chamber Orchestra at the Executive Mansion and at all presidential inaugurations, leading the band for numerous major national events, both at the White House and throughout the country. Our moderator for today's session is Gail Brechting. Gail is the president of the Association of Concert Bands and is the conductor of music of the West Michigan Concert Winds. Now, Gail, I turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Beth. And happy birthday, U.S. Marine Band. We're very excited to have you here, Colonel Fettig. And she just stole some of my wind here. I was going to say that you were the 28th conductor and things like that. I had a chance to go back and look at all the other conductors too, and it's very interesting to read the history of that. But welcome. We're really glad to have you here. And we'd like you to maybe talk to us a little bit about your own personal background, about coming into the military, and then would like to kind of get to find out a little bit more about some of the things that you do with the Marine Band and perhaps the inauguration, and then get into some of the favorite things that you do as a Marine Band and your role in that, if we could do that. So welcome, glad to have you here today.
Sure, Gail, thank you very much. And Beth, thanks for the invitation, and to all of the membership of the Association of Concert Bands. This is really exciting for me to get to connect with people, even though the pandemic is starting to thankfully wind down a little bit. This virtual connection we continue to make is so valuable. And so I'm really happy to be here today. My journey to where I am was a little bit unexpected. It was not my lifelong ambition to be in the United States Marine Band or be the director of the Marine Band. Although looking back on it, I wish that had been my childhood dream, because it ended up being a perfect place for me. But I was originally from New Hampshire, spent most of my young life growing up in New England. I went to college at the University of Massachusetts. So moving to Washington for the Marine Band position was the first time I really kind of lived outside of the New England area. I was a clarinetist. I say was because I don't play much anymore, but I really wish I did. And I'm looking forward to getting back to it someday when I have a little bit more time. And that's how I came into the Marine Band as a clarinet player, as Beth said in the introduction. My entry to the band was a little bit of a surprise. I was going to college, getting a music education degree. I did get a performance degree as well, but I fully intended to be a band director. At the high school level was kind of what I really was aiming for. And in my senior year of college, right before my student teaching, I was on a tour with the American Wind Symphony, which I think many of us are familiar, Robert Boudreau's group out of Pittsburgh that functioned for 65, 75 years under his baton. So I was lucky enough to get a position there. And in the summer of 1997, I was on tour with that group before I was going to student teach in the fall. And I accidentally came across a newsletter from the United States Marine Band, from this famous band, the President's Own, which I of course had heard of, but never had thought I would join that band or be qualified, or certainly be in the United States Marine Corps, which seems so foreign to me at the time. But I turned over this newsletter and there was an opening for a clarinet. And the audition was in about 3 weeks from that time. This was end of July, early August, and I was in Baltimore on a stop on this tour. So I was really curious. I thought, what is it, what kind of music do you have to play to win an audition or even take an audition for the Marine Band? So I made a phone call from my friend's apartment and I got the music sent to me out on the road. And I started practicing these excerpts, and I practiced pretty hard. All my spare time, I was determined to see if I could play this music. So I got to the end of the tour. I went back home, and it was about 2 weeks, or I'm sorry, 3 or 4 days actually. It was the same week of the audition. I had not yet applied to take the audition, and I had practiced this music, but I was like, I'm not really ready. I don't think I'm going to show well. So I decided not to go. And then at the last minute, my parents convinced me to take a chance. So I bought a plane ticket, I think 2 days before the audition, flew down, stayed with my uncle in Virginia, who lived in just outside of DC. I took the audition with no expectations. And at the end of the day, I won that clarinet audition. Wow. And that set me off on this path, which eventually led to me becoming an assistant director. And then since 2014, becoming the director of the band. I tell people all the time, to this day, it's my 7th year as director, my 24th year in the band. I can't believe that kind of sequence of events led to what now has become a dream job for me. And this is just such an amazing place to serve and an amazing place to make music. I can't imagine, at least for now, being anywhere else. So,
wow, that's quite a story. That's a great story for a student to hear, because possibilities can happen. And you obviously were a better clarinetist than you believed. That can happen sometimes,
what it is that I think sometimes we live in a bubble. We're studying, we're playing, and even if we're good and accomplished where we are, you don't really have an idea of where you stack up across the country until you go try. And I think the lesson for me was that you got to try. You'll never know if you don't just give it a shot. But of course, embedded in that is the fear of failure and the expectation that I'm probably not going to be good enough, and that's going to feel bad. I had to get over that. And where I was very, very lucky is I only had to get over that once. I did that one audition and kind of pulled my pants up and said, just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? And it worked out well for me. But I really, that was seared in my brain. From that moment forward, I never forgot that taking that chance is so important. And in fact, it led to my career as a conductor, because 3.5 years later, after I joined the band, I was very happy being a clarinet player. An opening came up for a junior assistant director, and anyone in the organization could audition. But traditionally, it was more senior people that had been there 8, 10, 12 years, really established themselves as musicians. They were the ones that were most competitive. But since they opened it up to everybody, I thought, again, what do I have to lose? I don't have any professional experience as a conductor, but I do have some in college. It'll be a great experience. So I threw my hat in the ring, and to ruin the story, I was chosen, which still boggles my mind that my former boss, Colonel Tim Foley, who's the 26th director of the band, saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself, and had a feeling that 10 years down the road, I might actually be good for the band and be accomplished. So I almost didn't do that either, because I thought it's too early in my career, maybe down the line, but this is too soon. I don't want to be presumptuous. But if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am now as the director. So,
yeah, and good lessons to be sharing with. You go all over the world with the young people. It's a great lesson. And those of us in the Association of Concert Bands, many people come back after not playing for many, many years. And if you just take that chance, maybe go study with someone, all of a sudden a whole different world opens up. Well, that's absolutely a wonderful, wonderful story. I thank you for sharing it. And you seem to be on your path. You mentioned that. And I've noticed that before I got a chance to meet you, just watching you and other things you've done, and many of your videos and things that the Marine Band does. You just seem to be very comfortable where you are. I know you must work really hard at it, but still. And you also seem to me very interested in history. And that must just be a natural, innate thing, because a lot of the things I see in you, and I would assume it's very important in your position to have that happen too. So, I tell us a little bit about your love, it seems, for history and, that obvious drive, how that helps you.
Yeah, I absolutely love history. I don't know where that began, and I don't know exactly if my career has helped that blossom. I'm sure it has, because being here in this particular band, 223 years old, the legacy of John Philip Souza and so many famous musicians, and the fact that the band has been such a cornerstone of musical events for 2+ centuries, you can't escape that. It's part of our everyday existence. I mean, even going in our facility, our music library is also an archives. So you walk down to the library to get a piece of music and you see artifacts, you see safes that hold documents from 150 years ago. You see old instruments that were used by the great cornetists at the turn of the century. So it's just an everyday part of our existence. And I've always loved that idea of what happened here 200 years ago, what happened in this moment, and we're a living, breathing organism in that environment. So that has become as important to me as the music making. And the music making, of course, is wonderful. And the musicians are incredible. But to know that we're carrying on this continuum that has been unbroken since basically before Washington was established as our capital, before the White House was even completed, the band was there, and it's never ceased to exist. So I definitely feel a kinship with every member that has come before us, really the thousands of people who have worn this distinctive uniform. And that's one of the things that keeps this job, this responsibility from ever getting old. Because let's say you're playing a piece for the 50,000th time, you never get tired of it because of the context. Not only the music making and artistic context, but the historical context as well. And you feel, I think naturally, as do many of my colleagues, a deep responsibility for carrying that on. I always joke with people, I said, my number one responsibility as director of the Marine Band is to not be the last director of the Marine Band.
Yeah, good point.
To pass that on to the next generation, to keep this going for another 200, 300 years is so important. And so everything we do musically, everything we do administratively is geared toward perpetuating this institution and honoring that legacy and that history. But it lights me up, just to go to the White House on a regular basis and just to be able to look around and imagine not only what we're doing now in 2021, but imagine what happened during Lincoln's time with the Marine Band, to imagine what happened 40 years ago, to imagine what happened during World War II. We have these leader logs in the library, and you can go and see that the director wrote down what happens. You can look at November 22nd, 1963 and see what happened the day that Kennedy was assassinated with the band. You can go back to where there was a White House fire in the turn of the century and the band was playing while they were evacuating the other wing. You can go back to Pearl Harbor. All of these moments, we were there with a front row seat for that history. And that is just so incredible to acknowledge. And again, it has nothing to do with my training as a clarinetist or a conductor. It's just simply the human factor of it, which is so fascinating.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've always had a difficult time describing is the feeling we have emotionally that we call patriotism. That's just a hard one for me to describe because I get emotional. And so I stop and then I think, well, that is very deep rooted in our country and with the people, and exactly what you're talking about is that. Is the history of it and the knowledge. It must be hard to get your work done when you got all that stuff to walk by and go, oh, I want to see that today. And it's like walking in a candy store sometimes.
It does, but sometimes, when you're sitting at your desk answering phone calls and emails, you need a break, and there's a built-in break in my building. I can go and just escape from that for an hour and just take in the things that really, make us feel grateful to be here.
Absolutely. Not a lot of good depth. And one of the questions I was going to ask you is how you lean on your background and how you lean on past experience, like your hindsight. How does that make your job more successful and rewarding? You're kind of answering it, but is there any more to that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gail. And it's kind of multifaceted for me, because I do lean on my personal experiences musically. I think we all do. I mean, as conductors, as musicians, music is an art of emotion. It's an art of your emotion and how you're sharing it with people. And, you mentioned patriotism, and I think about this a lot. And the longer I serve here, the more I think about it, especially in times of political turmoil, social turmoil, which of course we've had in this country and will continue to have. It's just built into our system. And it makes you think, what is patriotism and how can it be used for good? And the longer I serve here, the more I realize that patriotism is not really for me about allegiance or even pride in your country, although we feel that. But it's pride and allegiance to each other. It's this idea that we are a community, and that we are here for each other, and we're proud to be together in this country, which automatically translates to pride in our nation. But when we do patriotic things at the White House or on tour or at the Capitol, I always think about it in the sense of how can we embolden and amplify our sense of community, our sense of sitting next to each other and being proud to be in the same space. And I do believe it actually works. It sounds like cheesy hyperbole, but we in the Marine Band, more than any other organization, we see it on a daily basis. We see that in action. You go out on the road and you go to a community where there may be people of all kinds of backgrounds, people of all kinds of political persuasions, and we're the president's own. We've been serving presidents of all parties for 223 years. We're there, and you get that sense that, okay, this is about us. It's not about, what you may believe personally, which is fine. It's not about necessarily an allegiance to our flag or our ideals as a country, although that is important in its own way. It's an allegiance to each other. It's an allegiance to and a pride in being here together. And I think when you scrape away all the other stuff, music, as we know, is so incredibly powerful at being that vehicle that helps people forget that, yeah, we're different, but we're really the same in the sense that we're Americans. And I don't think we can say that often enough. And we can't do enough to kind of remind people that that is the thing that is so important. And that's the thing that's going to help us persevere and get through the difficult times.
Absolutely. And as you say that, and being a director of a community band and the president of ACB, that is exactly what it is that keeps these bands together. Yeah. And why I believe that nothing is going to really kill off unless it's financial reasons. But, being a band director for 40 years and more, I know that when something happens in the education world and they say, nope, can't have it anymore, the music world always seems to find another river to be able to find what they want to help. So that's just built in. And so what you're saying there is exactly what the heart of ACB is and what the heart of most community bands are, which really in many ways is some of the same thing as why the military bands were started and the community bands. It's the same concept, is how it helps lift people's spirits. Absolutely.
Well, and again, it's the human factor. I mean, music in the military seems so antithetical. It's like you have war fighters, military established to protect the country and to fight wars. That's what the military is. And to have a huge, in our country, a very proudly, a very huge military music complex, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why the Marine Band was formed when the Marine Corps was established. It was one of the most important factors of the new Marine Corps, not weapons, but musicians. And it was not only function, it was also the form of what it meant. And what it meant was the human factor. It's that you can't have a military without a human connection. You can't have a military without diplomacy and without connections that can be made without raising the weapons. And everybody's known that from the beginning. And so our job is to try to be that. It's to try to do what I just described on an international level and make it easier for us to have our military do their jobs without going too far.
That goes back centuries. I mean, that goes back to Rome, that kind of thing. So it is, that's why it is something we continue to have in our lives. So hanging your hats on that really helps sometimes when you are in the music world, the education world, or the financial world with music. It really does. And thank you for stating that so beautifully. That's great. Let me ask you a question here. Share with us some of the expectations of a U.S. Marine Band. I know you do over 500 or more performances a year. I mean, there's only 365 in the year. So, thinking that you described the maiden purpose primarily. Historically, has that changed in the years that it's been in existence, or is it still basically the same concept?
It has changed in the sense that it has evolved and grown. So our mission has always been to serve the president and the commandant, but 150 years ago, the number of ways in which we did that was relatively compact. We would go to the White House, we'd walk over to the White House and play commitments, in the 1870s, 1880s, and the commandant would have ceremonies at the barracks or wherever else, and then there would be local concerts, but there wasn't kind of a huge, diverse set of responsibilities that we have now. And the Marine Band is larger now than it was in any other time in its history. We're still not large enough, I'll be honest with you. right now is a great example. This week we have coming up, we are spread to our max. So I have 135 musicians. I have 155 total permanent members of the Marine Band. 20 of them are professional staff, which I've expanded over this pandemic. I've added more video and audio staff, more public relations and communication staff to adapt to the new expectations. But I've got everybody on deck next week. I've got people on leave and on vacation because it's the summer, but everyone else is working multiple ways. We've got an audition, we've got 2 White House commitments, we've got 2 parades, we've got a retirement, we've got an out of town thing. So what we're expected to do has expanded a lot. We have really, over 500 performances a year, but over 1,000 commitments a year. That includes rehearsals and drills and everything. So we're all over the place all the time. And our responsibility is to be available 365 days a year. So the Marine Band isn't ever kind of on vacation and unavailable. We are available all the time, and we're available on short notice, especially with the new administration. A lot of our commitments come in at the last minute. So I got a call last week for a commitment this week. I have a pretty substantial commitment we need to do in support of our president. And we have to plan the music. We have to do all of that and be ready to go and have the personnel available. So that is our bread and butter, to be able to be on call, to be able to provide anything that's needed in any style of music, and to be able to do it every single day of the year, even when I have people on vacation, doing other things, going and pursuing their education, things like that.
Well, that in itself, it's a professional organization. It's its own company in a way, that you are hired to do those things in our world. That's how I can think of that. That's fantastic. May I ask you, how many presidents have you had the honor to work with?
I'm on my 5th president now. So I have been here since President Clinton. I was here for the second half of President Clinton's tenure, and then President Bush Jr., President Obama, President Trump, and now President Biden. This is my 5th president.
My goodness, you look way too young for that.
Oh, I can show you a picture when I looked a lot younger than I look now later on.
That's very good.
And every president's been all of them. I have to say, all the presidents that we have served and first ladies and administrations have all been wonderful, without exception.
Oh,
all loved the Marine Band, appreciated the great skill that all of our Marines have, and really, to answer a question previously, Gail, that all of our Marines come in having. We need people to come in that are at the top of their profession, and then they grow even further once they get into the band. They diversify their own skills and interests. They bring other things to the table, which is what makes us so successful. If we need an Irish ensemble, my principal bassoonist plays penny whistle and Irish flute. One of our pianists plays accordion and plays, one of our percussionists plays concertina, plays the little Irish accordion.
Right.
All of our folks are so curious that when an opportunity arises for us to diversify our talents, we rely on their talents and their training to bring that to the table, even if it's completely different than what we hired them to do. But I think that's why the presidents that we've served, they're all different, and they all have different musical tastes, but they all really appreciate almost immediately what they're hearing and seeing. They realize that this is an incredible institution, and it's really woven into the fabric of the house. We're really kind of part of the building, which I'm also very proud of, because even though we can be the background and just be the texture, the fact that we are an institution that's part of the White House and always has been is it's really something that to hang your hat on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very big pride thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, that's wonderful. Can you share with us maybe a little bit of some of the military honors that are something special in your heart that you had the opportunity to do?
Yeah, the military side of what we do is incredibly special. We talk about the White House a lot, which is obvious, to be able to play and be around great musicians and celebrities and actors and dancers and poets, which is wonderful, and to play for presidents. But at our heart, we are the United States Marine Band. We are the flagship band of our Marine Corps. And one of the things that is so unique about the organization is that when people come in, most of our folks come in right from the civilian sector. So we do have other people who are Marines or soldiers or sailors who then come over to the Marine Band. But the vast majority, like me, didn't have any exposure to the Marine Corps until I came in. And there is a transformation that happens when you join the Marine Band. And it almost happens without exception. You get into the band and you're there to be a professional musician, but you put on this uniform and you cut your hair and you start to absorb the spirit of the Marine Corps. And in my case, it was about a year and a half before I felt really like I was in tune with the Marine Corps and felt like a Marine. But once I did, there was no going back. And it's applicable to our job, which is to be musicians. You know, we are not the war fighters that our brothers and sisters are. We're here to make music, but we do it with the same spirit of honor and of respect and of great dedication to our core that all of Marines do all over the world. I mean, we really translate that into the way we make music. And so when we have an opportunity to play for service members, whether it's at Arlington National Cemetery for full honors funerals, which we do every day of the year, all throughout the year, or whether it's on tour for veterans groups, or if we go to Walter Reed to play and work with wounded warriors, that is a really special kind of music making. It's so visceral because you are turning this idea of commitment to something greater than yourself. You're turning it into music. And it's a different kind of music making than what we do at the White House, or we do it in a concert, you know, like at a WASB or at ACB convention. That's wonderful, but it takes on a whole new meaning. And I never get over the feeling of just immense pride when I go on the road and I'll give you a story. This 3 or 4 years ago, we were on the road and we got wind that 2 stories.
Yeah.
There's going to be a bunch.
That's what you're here for.
We got word that there was a World War II Iwo Jima veteran in the audience. And so I asked that after the concert, could they bring him backstage so I could talk to him and just say thank you. And so we did the concert. I actually saw him in the front row. So we play at the end of the concert. We do Stars and Stripes and the Armed Forces medley, and he stands up for the Marine Corps. You know, he's probably 91, 92. He came back and the band was packing up quickly because we got to get back on the bus, get back to the hotel, sleep, get up the next day, go to the next town, which is 3 hours away. And the rotation on tour is very quick. We do 29 concerts in 31 days. So the band, you know, once the concert's over, they're like lightning. They get out of their uniforms, they put away the tubas and the instruments, they get on the bus. So this gentleman came back and I'm talking to him backstage and I'm still in my uniform and he's telling me the story of landing on Iwo Jima, which just blows my mind just right out of the gate. I'm talking to someone who was on Iwo Jima for that amazing, incredibly devastating battle that was so important to the Marines and to the war effort. And as I'm talking to him, all the band members start gathering around. They all stop doing what they're doing. They stop taking their uniforms off. They stop putting their instruments away. And I had about 30 or 35 of the 55, 60 band members all gathered around this gentleman as he's telling the story. And he was telling us a story about how he would sing on the island and he would make music with his fellow Marines. And that was the thing that kept them from freaking out, being on this, you know, Martian landscape as a young man, 20, 22 years old. And he was so moved by the concert because music was the thing that helped him to survive that day. And when he was in that audience today, with music being made by Marines, he was there reliving that. And he gave me a vial of sand from Iwo Jima that he had been keeping for 75 years, gave it to me for the band and said, I want you to have this because what you did was so special. And to have all of our band members around listening to him tell the story, it was just so moving. And I never would have had that experience if I weren't a Marine and served here. And I never would have understood ever how powerful music can be on that level. I know how powerful music is to us spiritually and emotionally, but what it does for other people, every single day in this band, I have a chance to meet somebody who tells me something new about what the music we make does for them and how it moves them. And that just brings, you know, what we do for a living to a completely different level. We get it on the Marine Corps side, we get it on the presidential side, and of course we get it with all of our colleagues, all of you, sharing music as musicians and knowing what that means. So it's a triple whammy, and I never would have known that before I joined the Marine Corps. And now 24 years later, you know, I love the Marine Corps with all my heart. I love the Marines with whom I serve. I will retire someday, but I will never not think of myself as a Marine because it is in my blood now, and it happens to everybody I work with as well.
That is a wonderful, wonderful story. Oh my goodness. And it just helps us understand, you know, the depth, because you can tell, being a civilian, my father was a World War II veteran, and he was a secretary, you know, over in Australia for the Seabees, but he took his trombone with him, and whenever they could, they'd play. And there were times when there weren't any military bands available, so they would pull together a group so that they could help people feel better about things. And so, you know, it's that same concept. It's very moving. And again, a good reason why some of our Association of Concert Band people, they do the Taps Across America. They do very important things, because those of us who are civilians still understand the importance of music to people in the world, because we feel that. Won't ever feel it like you, but in regards to being a Marine. However, it is important and we know it.
I'll tell you one other quick story because it popped in my mind, and this one's very specific. This was probably 4 years ago in Worcester, Massachusetts. We were on tour, and this is a kind of an impromptu thing. Our sponsor came backstage and said, we have a couple in the audience who their son was killed in action last year, and we are building a park for them. We're going to name the park after their son. And I was so moved by the story and by the generosity of this couple who lost their child, but they were in this community and they wanted to do something nice for the community. And so I thought, you know what, I try not to single, because so many people have lost loved ones. We try not to single people out necessarily because you don't want to leave anybody out. But it was a moment where it felt like we needed to do something to recognize this family, this Gold Star family. And so I asked Kevin, our moderator, I said, he sings all the time. I said, why don't we sing Danny Boy? We'll just tack it on to the end of your, yeah. I think the gentleman's name was Daniel too. I think that's why we did it. I think the Marine who was killed, his name was Daniel. So we have Danny Boy and we can play it and Kevin can sing it. And so we did. And he dedicated it to this Marine. And I tell you, Gail, we barely got through the performance because it was very clear that everyone in the audience was having an emotional moment, including us on the stage. Yes. And it almost made me think it was a mistake to do it because we barely got through it. But I just never forget how I felt after we did that for that family. It's the least we could do. But I can't help but believe it was cathartic to some way to see the Marine band up there playing, just 3 minutes of this song for your son. What can you say and what can you do for a family who loses someone like that? And that's the only thing we can do, but we can do something. And exactly. And that was just I'll never forget that moment.
And neither will they. That will be such an important thing to that family and that community that'll be there forever in that community. Yeah. It really will. Oh, these are just beautiful stories. I just had someone in chat asking me the question, do Marine military musicians, do they have to go through basic training?
So that's a very good question. And the answer for the President's Own is no, which is very unusual. And one of the reasons why I spent so much time talking about the way I feel about Marines in my service is because of that, because it's very unique. We have 10 field bands across the country. Those Marines do go to basic training, and Marine Corps basic training is very rigorous, as you may know. So they do basic training and they are deployable. They are weapons trained. And if they deploy, which is rare for the musicians, because we have plenty of Marines on both coasts in the MEFs, the Marine Expeditionary Forces, but they will go and do rearward security. So sometimes they will deploy. For the President's Own, because the Marines that we hire are 100% trained for their job from day one. Our job is to be musicians for the President and the Commandant. We cannot do that training in the Marine Corps. There's no real mechanism to train. So our folks are considered fully trained for their mission, which is to be musicians when they are identified. We do still have to adhere to height weight standards, be physically healthy, be physically fit. That is all required, even though we're non-combatants. But the Marine Band is very much an exception in the Marine Corps as far as military training is concerned, because for about 90 years now, 80 years now, we've been exempt from basic training.
Okay, thanks for that answer. Yeah. Right, wonderful. Well, let's move into some of the things that some of the people here probably had the opportunity to see, which was the 2021 Presidential Inauguration, and that it was very different historically in so many ways due to the pandemic. Would you like to share a little bit about the amazing concerts that the Marines have the privilege to put on at this time, like restrictions, safety, programming, etc.?
Yeah, I lost about 10 years off my life dealing with this last year, and especially the inauguration. We, like so many of you, we were very cautious from March of last year. March came down, and when everything shut down, we immediately shut down our public performances. We shut down our regular operations until we could get a sense of what was safe and what wasn't safe. Now, we couldn't just stop serving. We still had a mission. So we immediately transitioned to digital, and we have tons and tons of content over the last year and a half that is there permanently now online, which we're so proud of, but we had to do it very carefully, just like everyone else.
Sure.
What was not an option was to not play at the inauguration. So when we got to December, post-election, we knew what was going to happen. We had to figure out, what were we going to do to support the inauguration, and how could we do it to keep everyone safe and healthy? I didn't know, and normally we have an 80-piece band on the presidential dais. So if you look at old inauguration photos, that's an 80-piece band. Part of it is because it's so cold outside, we need to have redundant instruments so that if something freezes, we still can make music. And part of it's just to get the sound and volume you need. I knew that having a full concert band out there was probably not going to be possible, both for distancing that was important to keep the musicians safe, but also frankly for optics. You know, it wasn't going to be good for us to be crammed in there on international TV, even if we were COVID negative. This was prior to vaccines. That was not going to be a good look. So we're always concerned about what we represent and what we portray and how we lead in our example. But I had gone through, I wish I could show you the plans. I had about 3 different possible plans. And this was late December, folks. This was 3 weeks before the inauguration. I did not know what we were going to have. So therefore, I did not know what we were going to play. I had no program yet. I had a brass ensemble, was one COA, about a 30-piece brass ensemble, no woodwinds, just brass spread out at 6-foot intervals. I had a smaller concert band. You know, we were talking about the possibility of maybe doing a 40 to 45-piece concert band, which made me incredibly nervous.
Yeah,
because I don't think that we were going to be able to last through the 3-hour program. And also I was worried about freezing instruments. So that was the last choice. It was going to be, if somebody's going to force a band and they wouldn't let me do more than that, I would do it, but that would have been a problem. Yeah. And then we did what we went with, which was about a 60-piece concert band. Now, to do the 60-piece concert band and to have the spacing we needed an additional 30 feet on each side, which was that right? No, 30 feet total. So it's normally a 60-foot wide stage, and it's about 30 feet deep. So it's long, it's wide and shallow in front of the president. So we went beyond the knee walls we had there. We added 30 more feet to the stage. So we had a 90-foot wide stage for 60 musicians, and we spaced them out at 6-foot intervals. And then I inserted plexiglass in front of all of the directional brass. I don't know, frankly, if that really helped at all, but it was important for us to show that we were doing something based on the science to mitigate a little bit. The other thing we did is we got COVID tested about 5 times the week of the inauguration. So the day of the inauguration, everybody on that stage was COVID negative. That was made sure. Now, we didn't broadcast that. We couldn't put a little ticker on CNN saying, hey, by the way, the band is COVID negative. But for the health of our Marines, we made sure before every major rehearsal we had inside, we tested and they were negative. And then we made sure for the rehearsals at the Capitol that we were COVID negative. But I was nervous, I'll tell you. We had to push the limits of what we really should have been doing in a pandemic to support this properly. And thank goodness through this entire year and a half, I didn't have one Marine who got sick with COVID from work activities. We did have a handful that did catch COVID from family, other things, but nobody got it from being at work. But I worried about it every single day. Every day I woke up and looked at the reports and I thought, is this going to be the day that someone gets sick because of what we're doing in our mission? And is that going to be, I mean, the answer is yes, that would be my fault. I am responsible for the health and welfare of everybody under my watch. And I'm also responsible for carrying out the mission. And those two things were in conflict with each other for a year and a half. And I tried to make the best decisions I could with the science and with the recommendations, but we were in a zone that I had never been in before. And I was frankly kind of making it up as I went along to some degree. And the inauguration was the pinnacle of that. Now, on the flip side to your question, Gail, the inauguration experience was amazing.
Sure.
Inaugurations are amazing no matter what, because we're front and center making music for this great American ceremony. You know, we're on international TV, you know, we're creating the soundtrack for this symbol of democracy. It felt even more so this year because of the pandemic, because of the climate in the country. It felt like music was even more important than, dare I say, it would be previously. And it was borne out because, as you said, nobody was there in person. It was the strangest feeling after going through, I've had, I think this was my 6th inauguration, after seeing a sea of people all the way to the Lincoln Memorial, as far as the eye can see. It was so strange to look out on the Capitol grounds and to see just a handful of people there because it was so restricted. But the good news was there was nothing to shoot. Normally all the major networks are shooting this sea of people and how impressive it is. Instead, they just shot the Marine Band. So we ended up having a little concert.
You did. It was great.
Which normally we're kind of in the background. So that was a special treat. And we tried to maximize that as best we could. We tried to put together a program that was very uplifting, very inspirational, very American, more than just a bunch of marches, which are wonderful, but some symphonic music and some music that really captured the spirit of the moment and tried to heal a little bit from what we were all going through. And I also decided to commission some new music. And I told this story to you before, but I'll tell your members here that I thought it would be irresponsible of me to not have living composers represented. And if I'm going to have living composers represented, I wanted to do living composers who were doing something for the moment. So I had this idea that I would maybe debut a few fanfares, which are short and compact and emotional. And so the idea came to me because Jim Stevenson, who's a dear friend, had written a fanfare just before the inauguration called Fanfare for Democracy. And I told him, you know what, Jim, I'm going to play this. I'm going to premiere this at the inauguration. And then I thought, well, if I got Jim's fanfare, maybe I can find some other composers to write some fanfares for this. So my next step was that I looked at, I've always been an admirer of Adolphus Hailstork's music. And he had a wonderful fanfare on Amazing Grace, which I came across on a recording of Joanne Falletta, who's also a dear friend. She recorded it with the Virginia Symphony. So I thought this would make a great band piece. I contacted Adolphus and said, would you mind if we transcribe this for band? So he said yes. So now I had 2 fanfares and I wanted to have 4. So I said, I got to find 2 other composers. And I reached out to, I didn't know her prior to this, but she's a good friend of my colleague, Ryan Nowlin, Kim Archer, who's a magnificent composer. I've long loved her music, and I thought, let me ask Kim if she would like to write a fanfare for this. And she did, and she wrote a marvelous fanfare called Fanfare Palatia. And then I asked my other friend, Peter Boyer, if he would write a fanfare, which he wrote Fanfare for Tomorrow. The catch was, I contacted them about 12 days before the inauguration. And I said, because that's the minute I knew I had a concert band, I wrote to them. I called them. I said, if you want to do this, I would love it, but you've got basically less than a week to write this fanfare. And both of them said, oh my goodness, okay, I'll do it. Oh, and they composed and orchestrated an entire fanfare in less than a week. We played it for the first time 2 days before the inauguration, and then we premiered all these fanfares on the inauguration day as part of our program. And I was so proud to have those on national TV, have this new music. There was even an announcement for the crowd that said, these are new fanfares, commissioned for the moment. So those composers got a shout out, and they were, showing the president-elect and the vice president-elect showing up while they're playing this music in the background. It was really neat to see how it turned out on the broadcast.
It did. It was absolutely wonderful. I saw the whole thing because it just was a concert, and I was glued to it. So it was really wonderful as a band director to go, yes, yes, yes. The band gets to be shown a lot more. So
and I'll tell you behind the scenes, because there's always a question, every note of what the band played for that prelude is 100% live. So it's a 60-piece band, 90 feet wide, playing live. So if you think it sounds good, I'm really proud about that because the conditions were less than ideal to play a live concert.
Absolutely, especially for an inauguration. Oh my goodness. One of the things you've mentioned, and I've heard you speak at other times, is the whole idea of the music and the history and the intentional thought to bring nobility to the spirit of the inauguration, which I, as an American, am so impressed with that much depth of thought. Not that you wouldn't, but knowing it is a wonderful feeling. And you shared some of that but I know that you tried to convey things with your music that day. Is there anything else you would like to share with that?
Yeah, one of the things I've learned over my career here is to be very intentional and very careful about the music I choose. And I like to think I've gotten better at that over the years. I've gotten a little more intuitive about it just because of the experiences and making a few, not mistakes, but maybe choices where like, I probably should have done something different there. So we do it diplomatically, like for state functions, we're very careful about the music we choose because we don't want to inadvertently offend anybody. We want to make sure that it's appropriate. And I do the same thing for big moments like inaugurations. Every selection, I want there to be a reason behind it. And I want it to capture the moment in an appropriate way without being political, without being, stepping into any kind of strange social kind of bear trap. We have to be very careful to be as neutral, but as as kind of tuned in to the American spirit as we can be. And that's even going so far as to choosing the music we play for walk-on music for our VIPs. And so a lot of people don't notice, but when former presidents come on stage, or former first ladies or secretaries, or the Chief Justice of the United States, I choose marches and music that has a little bit of a connection to them.
Yeah,
You know, and I'll give you an example. One nod that I gave to the president-elect was that we played Souza's Beau Ideal when the president-elect's family was brought out. Nobody would have any idea unless you looked at the title, but that was in honor of his son, who of course passed away from cancer. So those are just nods that we like to put in there as an honor to our commanders in chief, to our leaders. Even if nobody notices, it makes us feel good that we're putting some intentional thought behind those things. And, you know, I also thought it was really important, given what we're all, you know, endeavoring to do in our arts in this country right now, to make sure that the program was diverse and that represented our country in all aspects. I thought it was really important to include Adolphus's music. As an African-American composer, it was very important to me when Vice President Harris was announced, to make sure that the music we played was by a woman composer. So we played a piece by Julie Giroux, who's also a friend, and she was elated. I was actually surprised when I told Julie that I had chosen her march to introduce Vice President-elect Harris. She went nuts. I mean, she was putting it all over Facebook, and she kept telling me how honored she was. And I thought it was just a very small thing that I was letting her know. And I was really taken aback by how much it meant to her. And so that was just a win-win. It was like, of course I'm going to do this. And the fact that Julie was so happy made me even happier. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Those kinds of things mean a lot. You know, one of the things I just saw in the chat that kind of fits right in here. My question would be, what's it like working with the world's brightest and most talented musicians? But the question was, most of them have like their DMAs? Are they from music conservatories before they even come to you?
Yeah.
That was kind
yeah.
of
Well, the answer to the first question is a little scary, because when you stand up in front of some of the best musicians in the world every day, and you're exposed, as you know very well, Gail, as a conductor, everything you do is on their radar. Everything you do well or do not so well, you can't fool them. So I've gotten more comfortable over the years, but I've never been 100% comfortable in front of such accomplished musicians, and you know, making sure that I respect their talent and their time, and have a connection with them, but collaborate with them rather than leading them. I try not to look at it as that I'm leading them or coaching them through the way that I think something should go, because they're as accomplished as I am, and more so. So I really try to keep that in mind as I go through the motions. And of course, I'm a colonel in the Marine Corps. Everybody calls me sir. I am the boss, but I'm the boss over really educated and talented and intelligent people. And so that's a very interesting challenge, leadership wise, to be as collaborative as possible all the time, while still making decisions that ultimately are my responsibility, even if people don't agree with them. The education is very high. Yes. Currently, I think we are at 100% of our folks have a bachelor's degree across the board. 65%, I think, currently have at least a master's degree. And I believe we're up to about 15% of our folks have a doctorate. So it is probably the most highly educated enlisted population in the entire Marine Corps. Other bands in town have similar stats. So all of the premier bands in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Coast Guard, all have very educated, very accomplished musicians in their ranks, which is really necessary in many ways to win this audition. It's so competitive. We do have the anomaly every once in a while. We have the 20-year-old who's a junior in college and comes in and just is amazing. And I'm very happy to snatch them up before somebody else does. And those folks blossom as well. But most of the time, our average age of new join is about 25, 27 years old. People have gotten their advanced degrees, they're working already, and then they win the audition and transition to the Marine Band.
That's fantastic. It's kind of in a funny way, it's like being the coach of these pro teams. You know, what is it that you can help these people who are so trained, same as what you deal with? I've often thought that about the fine orchestras in the world too, as these conductors come in and I watch them and try to see how is it they're working. It's bringing the art to from the podium out, and working this music is really where the job of the conductor is, you know, and you do that beautifully.
Well, thank you. I mean, I have learned over the years that my job mostly is not to dictated interpretation. It's to allow the music to go where it needs to go, and then and much like I said earlier, bring people together. So, we bring our audiences together. We also bring our musicians together and negotiate those things that make the best musical sense as a community. And I spent a lot of my time on the podium in rehearsal with the band talking about, why I think that works, and if it doesn't work, saying, look, that doesn't work. What you were doing is better. Let's go back to that. And if I can see myself as a moderator, musical moderator for that musical negotiation, and then we get it to click, everyone then knows it. And those are the best feelings when you're rehearsing and getting to a place where you're learning a piece of music, when you've made a decision together and it's right, and then you can solidify it.
Absolutely. Fantastic. One of the things I heard you speaking on, and I just found it fascinating, was when you worked with some of the pop stars in the inauguration that you had to work with.
Yeah.
Please share the one about how you got through the music with the Star Spangled Banner. And I'm serious, and it seems like we'd go, oh, she obviously wasn't singing in 3/4. However, there's a reason behind all this. And when you shared what it was that had to be done, I was amazed at how you handled all of that. So could you share a little bit of Lady Gaga's story?
Yeah. So, we have had, this is one of the weirdest parts about my job is, a classical musician. We play all kinds of music, of course, in the Marine Band, jazz and ragtime and funk and everything. But when we work with the pop stars, it's really a window into a whole different world. And it's one of the coolest parts of our job because we get to move into this realm that otherwise you'd never really be in. And we've had some really wonderful experiences with some of these superstars, and a lot of them have been marvelous musicians, and Lady Gaga was no exception. She is a really exceptional musician and a really instinctual musician, and she's got a beautiful voice. And so, yes, I met her. She came to a rehearsal, and she came up and introduced herself as Stephanie, which of course is her real name.
Oh.
I thought that's great. Of course you're Stephanie, right? You're a person, you have a real name. And we worked through this arrangement that had been done. This arrangement was written by her music director that she sang at the inauguration. Sometimes we write the arrangements based on demos that the artist will send us, and sometimes their staff will write it, and we're fine either way, whatever they're most comfortable with. So he wrote this arrangement for her, and he did it like 3 days before the inauguration. So there were revisions, and we were getting different forms. And then she came in the day before the inauguration to do her rehearsal. And it had all kinds of different meters and things because she was singing it with, a little bit of freedom, which is her way. However, she said to me right out of the gate she said, this is so important to me to make this about our country and to make this about our national anthem. I love this arrangement and it is me, but I wanted to keep it, in reverent and not too showy. And she said that I'll never forget this. She said, I really want to feel like I'm part of the band. And she said this unprompted. She wanted to feel like she was a band member doing this together. It was, and talk about collaboration. I mean, it was not the diva coming in to have the band accompany her. This was her wanting to have a collaboration on her national anthem. And she worked through a process in our rehearsal where she worked out every aspect of that performance. She wanted every little phrase ending to be just so and perfect. The time we took in different places, her gesturing, even the choreography about how she was going to present herself, even to the dress she wore. She wore a red dress because she wanted to match the band's red uniforms. Of course, we were in coats, so you couldn't see them. But all of this I thought was so wonderful. And she was really wonderful to work with because she really took it so seriously. And she went up there on, and this arrangement that she did had some patches in it, had some string patches and a heart patch and different things. So we did have to accompany these tracks that were being played over the top, but our band performance was live and her singing was live, of course. And she sang through this and she caught all the little subtleties in the arrangement and, was 100% confident because she had just worked on it so hard. And I was really proud of her. When we got done with that performance, just looking at her, knowing how much it meant to her and knowing how well it had gone, I was smiling ear to ear. You probably couldn't see me because my back was to the cameras, but I was really proud of how that came off. And one little thing, I'll share this with you all. It's a little bit of a private story, but it's so special. When she finished her rehearsal with us, I gave her a Marine Band coin, which of course is a tradition in the military. And she got very emotional when I gave it to her. And she said, I'm going to have this sewn into my dress for tomorrow's performance, because she wanted to keep it close to her for it. It was really such a treat to be able to see the human side of these wonderful, talented pop stars and superstars that we see on TV and have this professional life that we don't get close to, it's really nice to be able to know them as human beings as well.
Absolutely. And she's very much takes seriously her profession and what she does.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what an honor to be able to sing the Star Spangled Banner. I mean, at an inauguration.
Mhm.
And she was beautiful. It was lovely and really enjoyed it. And it wasn't ever about her really. I mean, you could tell.
Yeah. And that was a conscious decision, and I thought a very noble one that she made that decision that way.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Well, just so the people here in our group know, we were meeting ahead of time to get this ready for you. And I happened to mention something about one of the John Philip Sousa marches called the Library of Congress March, which I'm going to be doing with a group in another couple weeks. And I asked Colonel Fettig about it, and he said, you have one of those? Because as far as he knew, there was only the ones in Washington,
Right.
and is getting ready to do some things. So I went and got my score for it that was from the Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp where I'm performing it. And we talked a little bit about it. And this is kind of a lead in to what we're going to talk to about next. But if you've been watching our ACB Connects, you know that we had 2 speakers on from the Library of Congress in the music division, and it was a fantastic ACB Connect. So you can go back to our website and see that one, but I pulled it really from the file because it was titled that, because I had learned quite a bit from the ACB Connects about our Library of Congress and all the fantastic music ability to see and learn about and go in and see, eventually be able to go in and see that. So this is a lovely march. I'm sure there's many of you in ACB who have played it because it is a popular, it's not popular, but it's a really good march. I really enjoy it. I can't wait to work on it. But Colonel Fettig, you said you're going to be doing something with this. Can you talk a little bit about some of the deep cuts and your top 10 and some of the marches of the Sousa groupings that we can get into in your website?
Yeah. So when I took over as director in 2014, one of the things I wanted to do long-term was re-record all of the Sousa marches. There's more than 136 of them. We hadn't done a full collection of recordings of Sousa marches since the 1970s, and the technology was not as great. The performances happened over about a 10-year period, and they're a little uneven, different bands, different styles. So I thought, if I'm here long enough, I want to do it with the same band, same space, same microphone, same conductor. And I thought, if we're going to do that, let's make this an educational project, not just for the Sousa aficionados who want to hear all Sousa's marches played by the Marine Band the way that we play them, but what if we could make the music available as well? Of course, there are a lot of editions of Sousa's marches, but a lot of people still play them off of the little Octavio, First John Church editions, which are filled with mistakes, filled with errors and inconsistencies in articulation, are not marked up in any way the way that Sousa would have traditionally played them. And that's by design. He never wanted it written down because he wanted a Sousa march conducted by the March King to be a special experience. But today in 2021, we need everybody to understand what that history is and what that performance practice was. And the Marine Band has been playing these marches a special way for years. So I thought, let's make editions of these marches. And for many of the Sousa's earlier marches, there is no full score. There is no edition. It was because they're not played that often. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had every march from review in 1873 all the way to the Northern Pines in 1931? What if we had an edition and a full score marked up exactly the way the Marine Band plays it, and we could provide that via PDF for everybody? So that's what we've done. So this Sousa project we have is not only the recordings by the Marine Band done in modern technology, but also full scores, YouTube pages, full sets of parts for all of the marches that are public domain up to the one where we hit for public domain. That's all available for free. And so that's going to be one of the legacies that the Marine Band offers to educators and bands all over the place. And even if you don't want to play these marches, to be able to go and watch the score go by while you're listening to the march is kind of fun too on YouTube. So when the pandemic hit, we had to put the project on hold. I couldn't get the full band together to record volume 7, which is our last volume. We're doing it now, and it's going to be out in April, and the project will be done. We couldn't record it. So I thought, all right, I've got to do something to keep this enthusiasm for Sousa alive. And so I thought, well, there's all these marches. People always ask me, what are my favorite Sousa marches? And so I decided to do a little video series of my top 10 favorite Souza marches, at least right now. And I
Yeah.
give a little bit of a story about each one, what it's about, when Souza wrote it, why I like it. So we did that top 10. And then recently, while the pandemic was still going on, I thought, there's so many marches like the Library of Congress March that people don't really know. We all know Washington Post and Liberty Bell and all these ones, but there's so many great marches that people don't know. What if I did a Souza deep cut series? And I went through and I picked 3 marches from every one of our albums up through volume 6 that I thought were good marches that are lesser known. And I did a whole series on those so people could get familiar with those as well and bring some light to them. So in total, that's 28 marches, the 28 videos I did about these different marches that tells you a little bit about it and gives you some background on some of those things.
Sure. Oh, that's fantastic. Is there something we wanted to share with that, Nancy? See if she's got
I
anything.
think she's got a couple of the videos she can
I
show.
think she was
They're all on YouTube too.
Yeah, here we go.
Hello, I'm Colonel Jason Fettig, Director of the President's Own United States Marine Band, and I'm here to debut a new video series celebrating the timeless music of the legendary John Philip Souza. Souza wrote over 136 marches, and many of these titles have become world famous. However, just like a great rock band or singer-songwriter, sometimes there are also hidden gems on the B side of the record. Such is the case in classical music as well. So what about some of those 136 numbers from the March King that didn't rise to global fame? Are there masterpieces among these obscure marches? Well, you get to be the judge of that as we launch this new video series called The Marches of John Philip Souza, The Deep Cuts. Our recording collection, The Complete Marches of John Philip Souza, is available online for free download, and that collection is presented in chronological order. So we thought we'd also start this series at the very beginning of Souza's career as a composer. Our first march is from 1876, when Souza was just 21 years old, and it's called Revival. This march was actually originally written for orchestra, as at the time Souza was performing violin in the theater orchestras of Philadelphia. This was 4 years before he would take command of the Marine Band. Souza's former music teacher, John Esputa Jr., was thinking of this march when he correctly forecast Souza's future success. A letter he wrote was published in the newspaper and said, "We now have on hand the Grand Revival March composed by J.P. Souza. The march is deserving of credit. We are glad to see such proficiency in one so young and predict for him a brilliant future." The reason this is called Revival March is due to the quoting of the famous hymn Souza wove into the march, called In the Sweet By and By. So many of Souza's original melodies were incredibly inventive, but he was equally skilled at incorporating famous tunes into some of his marches, and this was the first time he would do this. Our first Souza deep cut is a clever march from very early in Souza's career, Revival, from 1876. Almost over.
It's a wonderful march. In fact, a really quick story, if I can say it, we did my band did 4 virtual concerts this season, all on virtually, and the last one I did was that one, specifically because it was in the Sweet By and By that, okay, we're going to move on now from this pandemic. And so we downloaded yours and used it, and it was fantastic.
That's great. I've been really self-conscious because we started this series 7 years ago, and I'm making editorial decisions. Sometimes they're fairly well informed based on the documentation we have from the Encore books, but sometimes I was just guessing based on my knowledge of Souza. And I worried that like 6 or 7 years go by, and I'd go back to the first editions back from 2014, be like, why did you decide to do that? Now it's in ink and everybody's going to take it as gospel. So luckily I haven't run across too many mistakes that I've made, but there's always time later on.
But it was in its time and it had purpose at that point. So
yeah, I guess it's like a piece of art, right? If you do a painting and then you paint different 10 years, it's that moment that's okay then. So,
but what a service you and the band have done for Association of Concert Bands, particularly to be able to find these marches, both the ones that everyone knows and use in their concerts, but also if you're looking for something more obscure, and to be able to download it and take it and have it and share it with the world, really. That in itself is such a huge gift that you have done and given the world of at least our organization. I know people talk about it all the time.
Well, I really appreciate that. I mean, I definitely saw it and still see it as a responsibility. One of the things that I think is so important about the band and all of our military bands, but especially the Marine Band, is that we are called upon to be a resource for all of our fellow musicians and really for everybody, music lovers across the board. And with Souza, especially since he was one of our own and he was our director, we have such a kinship with him. It just, since I got here, I knew about Souza before I joined the band, but I didn't particularly have a passion for him before I was in the Marine Band. Now I have a passion for John Philip Souza and what he did for American music and his music. So I feel like if we hadn't done this, I would have missed an opportunity to do something that was really important for his legacy, for American music, for preserving this part of our history that is in danger, could be in danger of kind of drifting away if we don't continue to celebrate it. So
absolutely. Is there anything else you would like to share about that series before we move into a next thing to talk about?
Just explore, even in your own time as a musician, it's fun just to get on YouTube and just kind of poke around the series and just hit a random track and listen to it and see if you stumble across something that you didn't know that you like. I mean, that's the whole point. Is it just to be a resource? There are some people that have been fanatical and they've printed out every score and they've downloaded every recording and they send me pictures of their library where they got them all. Other folks, it's on YouTube all the time. And so I'm hoping that it'll just be something that's fun just to do some exploration and hopefully gather an even greater appreciation for just how perfect a Souza March can be.
Sure, absolutely. A couple just general questions. One is, who do you get your orders from?
Well, the president is a big one. I'm kind of a strange chain of command because I do have a commanding officer who's a one-star general at the Pentagon in the Office of Communication for the Marine Corps in general. But I do take direct orders from staff on behalf of the president and on behalf of the commandant. So I kind of do an end around in some ways because our main mission is for the president. We are actually the only musical organization that is direct tasked by the White House. And really one of the only military organizations that's direct tasked by the White House. So we don't go through the normal Pentagon channels because we have this unique mission. So the White House will call us directly and say, we need you here tomorrow. And we go and then we back brief our military officials in the Pentagon. That's only for White House commitment. So it's a very unique, very specialized tasking. Everything else we do on behalf of the Marine Corps is done in normal channels that would happen for any military unit.
Absolutely. And one person asked before we started, do the band musicians in the Marines use their own instruments or are they provided for them? So
we are obligated to provide everybody the equipment they need to do their jobs. So we will purchase an instrument for everybody once they have, they are join the band. But, because we are a government organization, we need to be fiscally responsible. If somebody wants an instrument that is exorbitantly expensive because it's what they use personally, there are some limits to that. It's not an unlimited piggy bank for us to get people what they need. So, there are some of our string players who have instruments that are incredibly expensive, that there are their own instruments and they choose to use them for certain commitments. So what happens with those folks is we'll get them a very nice instrument that they will use in other places where they don't want to bring their instrument. But a handful of our folks do choose to use their own personal instruments because they're very comfortable with them. And in that case, we will pay for repairs for their instrument. We just, since they are using it for their official duties.
Okay. Thank you. That was a question someone had about that.
Mhm.
And, with what's happening in the world, especially with music and how we're trying to all sort of come back and with numbers and all of that. And you're one of probably the most viewed and modeled musical organizations really in the world for what we do, which is wind band.
Mhm.
Do you feel that there's room for any personal creativity and change in your position as the conductor? Do you have a bucket list of things that you hope to do? Are you allowed to have some? I mean, obviously you do, but I mean, you've already shared being able to pull up some pieces or ask composers and things of this nature, but are you allowed some creativity, and is that really part of your job?
I think I am. I have felt like I've had a great deal of artistic latitude in my time as an assistant director and as a director. And some of the things that I have held to be very important to me personally, like educational outreach. When I was an assistant director, I really wanted to create family concerts. I wanted to kind of expand our outreach in education and our exposure to students and our accessibility for students. That was something we didn't have to do. Educational outreach is not part of the Marine Band's official mission, but it has become a part of our cultural mission because directors and musicians have felt it to be important. And luckily, it is also aligned with what the Marine Corps is happy about us doing. I mean, that human connection and that educational connection has become a huge part of our value to the Marine Corps as well, especially when we're on tour. Artistically, I really do feel like I am the conductor and the musician that I want to be. Just Jason Fettig. I mean, I get to play the music I want to play. I get to commission the composers I want to commission. I haven't felt restricted in any way as an artist. And I think part of that is because I also understand what my responsibilities are as director of the band. I understand who my audiences are. I know that a concert that I might play for a tour audience in Nebraska might be different than a concert I might play for the Commandant of the Marine Corps, which will be different than a concert I play for the Association of Concert Band Membership. But I can do all of those things. We can do all of those things. We can be a different thing to every constituent. The Marine Band means something different too. And so as long as we understand what our responsibilities are and what kind of music we need to play for whom at what time, nobody has really ever gotten in my business about the things that we do that are a little bit out of the box, that are a little bit more progressive. And so I have never felt restricted. And I'm so grateful for that because I think it would have been hard for me as a musician and a conductor to have someone say to me, no, if you're going to be a military band conductor, you need to conduct like this. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be a military band conductor, you can't program Mahler and you can't program Schwantner and you can't program this. You can't commission Julia Wolf to do a new symphony. You have to play in this box. No one's ever said that because I think they respect that the Marine Band is all of these things to all these people. We are a band that goes and plays at Arlington National Cemetery and plays hymns and plays our wonderful, patriotic songs. And we are a professional concert band that commissions the most contemporary music possible and is on the cutting edge of our current state of the art. I hope that will never change. I do think we've engendered enough trust as an organization and institution to be able to do all those things. And it's one of the things that keeps us as good as we are too, because the musicians feed on that diversity of activity. They feed on our ability to do all of those things and not just be relegated to one area of military band life.
Right. Absolutely. And being it's the birthday, is there like a think tank for what the future could be for the next 223 years? Obviously, you're making me feel like there really is, because you're so creative and vibrant and thinking positively. But is that something that you try to do, have that future?
I do. I can't predict the future, but I'm constantly, as a musician and a citizen of our musical professional community, I am constantly thinking about how we can both hold on to the things that are a big part of our establishment and our foundation and traditions, and also innovate in a way that makes us relevant moving forward. Yeah. I think live music is going to be relevant forever. Live band music is a special subset that we have to take care of. But I think I often think in my job that we also always need to be going back to the fundamentals of what band music is. And you're right in the center of it, Gail, with community bands. It's the music of the people. It has always been the music of the people. It's always been, like we talked about before we opened this session, it's always been playing in Carnegie Hall one day and playing at a high school gym the next day and playing the same program. It's not we play the rarefied orchestra music in Carnegie Hall and we play pop tunes in Broadway. No, you put together a program of good music that can be enjoyed by a wide swath of people, and you play it with great integrity and you program it with great integrity, and then you play it everywhere, whether it's outside or inside. I think that's going to be the thing that makes bands continue to be special. Never forget we're the music of the people, whether it's contemporary or traditional, it doesn't matter. We're there to bring people together and to be part of our communities. And so I think about that, and that kind of feeds all of my ideas about what we are and what we should be. But I do think that the innovation, that we can't ignore what this pandemic has done for us, that if we want to stay relevant, we need to win as many admirers and friends as musicians as possible. We need to know our audience, and we need to gather them up. And our audiences are all over the world. It's not just in our communities. If there's a way that we can continue to share through technology what we do and share it live, but share it with as many people as possible, so that when people do have a chance to come see you in person, it's no different than the great rock bands. Like, how many of us listen to records and tapes and CDs and thought Led Zeppelin's just an amazing band, and then when you finally got a chance to see them in person, it is because you spend so much time getting to know them through technology. I think it could be the same for us too. And, I'm trying to leverage that. I'm trying to, before I retire, which is in the not too distant future, I'm on the backside of my career, to set up the organization so that we can enter the next chapter of live music and leverage technology in a way that can share it with as many people as possible, so that it amplifies the value of when you finally get to have a real live experience with live musicians. But that's not the first time you've known about them. That's the key. And, like what we're doing right now, we're having a live interaction through technology, not as good as if we were all sitting in a room together, but better than if we didn't do it at all. Right. So that's what we need to do. And then just continue to do what we've tried to do, which is to never lose sight of where we've come from and where we're going, and keep a foot in both of those worlds, and never allow yourself to get off balanced one way or the other.
Absolutely. That's so very true. I mean, everything you do is exactly the same in our groups. It's just at a different, where we live and what we do, and the love of music in our schools. And that's one thing I'll just say very quickly. Thank goodness we have music education in our schools, because we would not be what we are today. Your band wouldn't even be what it is today.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's about the exposure. It's about showing every young person what's out there, what the world looks like through artists' eyes, and whether they become professional artists or not, of course, is not the point. The point is that they live with music. It becomes a part of their being, and then they appreciate it for the rest of their lives, and it enriches their life.
Absolutely. And the tours that all the military bands do. I know I took a middle school band to a tour, and it was I think it was an Army band, and it was in a big theater in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I know that there are students who stayed in band because of going to that concert. And of course, all the things you do, which is all the lights and all the excitement, they need that. But bottom line, it was a very fine band that played. Yeah. And they were in band. So it was something that was very important to them. And, that's important for the military band to understand, that the teachers who are doing it, we are so appreciative of what you do to help our students become the musicians that we hope will come into our concert or community bands that we have, that I'm involved with this way too.
I love to hear those stories. And, one of the things I helps illuminate those experiences is when they can also see that we're real people. We have these fancy uniforms and we're up on stage playing very, very well. But if we can create a personal experience, whether it's in the schools or at the concert, where they can talk to us and have a conversation person to person, that just, I think, amplifies that idea that music is special and made by real people.
Right. Absolutely right. I did have two questions that someone asked me while you were speaking. One was, do you personally have a favorite type of music?
It's hard to answer because my tastes have grown exponentially being here. And, we play everything with such dedication and so well that I've come to enjoy. I like, sometimes, just like different kind of meals, I love dramatic symphonic music. I always will. That's what brought me to music in the first place, is, not only symphonic orchestral music. I was always a huge fan of Mahler when I was growing up, but band music, I love the music that really brings a concert band to life and just hits you in the face with this incredibly visceral, emotional experience. So I'm a sucker for that. And when I have transcriptions done, I look for those pieces, the ones that you'll be able to play over and over again. And you just, every time that moment comes and you feel the same. But you can't have a diet of only that. And so there are times when I just love the lighter programs we do, where you just know that you're you're touching a nerve immediately with something that's so familiar and comforting to people. And frankly, sometimes some of the music that's a little easier to play is more enjoyable to play because you can just release, you can just relax, and you can just have a moment, and you don't have to worry about this, such a high degree of perfection that we put into everything. So this is where the tour concerts are amazing, because they're the best of both worlds. I put together programs, and it took me a lot of years to figure out how to do this. But to put together a program that has all of these elements, where you're giving some really thick, amazing emotional content to our audiences and teaching them something that, or exposing them to something they didn't hear before. But then you're also having these other moments that are that kind of relief and that release. And it's that combination. If you get the porridge just right, that kind of journey through that program creates a whole piece of art that then kind of stands on its own. I really do look at programs as a piece of art, not the individual pieces, but those are the brushstrokes in one piece of art. And I don't always get it right, but when I do, I'm really, really proud of that experience. And then you get to bring that to life for an hour and a half. So I don't know. That was I weaseled my way out of that answer.
You did. However, I really like the idea of the piece of art. That's very important for those of us who put programs together, that hopefully there's something in the program that everyone found something they liked.
I might spend, at this point in my career, Gail, I might spend more time, at least more mental time, putting together programs and revising and shuffling and redoing than I actually do studying the music. And I'm embarrassed to say that. But the reason I say that is because I study as much as I possibly can, but a lot of times I don't have the time I need to study the way I want to, because I have so many responsibilities. But I've gotten very good at being able to study with a great efficiency. But I'm always thinking about programming. I'll be in the car, I'll be lying in bed at night, I'll be watching TV. I'm always thinking about programming because it's such an important part of what we do as conductors. That is our piece of art. And it takes a lot of work to get it to be where it needs to be. And it never gets easier. But it's actually one of the most enjoyable things I think we do, is because
I agree. I absolutely agree. It's like putting together a beautiful meal or putting together a piece of artwork. And I listen hard to my musicians because they are thinking through a different box and different eyes and different ears than a conductor. And sometimes they'll say something and I'll say, oh, why didn't I think of that? Of course. And and I'm sure you have an amazing team for sure.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because you said think tank earlier. Is there a think tank about the future of the band? And what it really is the think tank is the entire membership of the Marine Band. We have 155 highly creative, thoughtful people. They're the ones that are currently shaping the future of the band and generating the ideas and the patterns that are going to take us to the next step. So absolutely, by creating a collaborative environment in our organization, those ideas percolate to the surface, and it catapults you and propels you toward where you need to go. Because we're all going to retire and move on, and we're creating the next generation of the Marine Band. They're in here now. So the people that are going to be here for the next 10 or 15 years, they're in the band already. Absolutely. They're getting acclimated. They're coming up with ideas about how we can be 10 years from now, and we're going to hand the reins over to them. And that continuum has gone on for 223 years, which is so cool to think about.
It is. And again, I'm talking as a civilian, but a musician. The thing that I like to hear from you saying this is that you do respect the people that work with you. Even though in the military, there's all the different types of ways you have to do that. But I think that's one thing, the beauty that I love about working with adult musicians in concert bands is that they come from such a broad experience base. And very few in the community world are all professional musicians with DMAs or whatever, but they come with all these other fantastic backgrounds that it helps for budget, it helps for choosing literature, it helps for finding venues. It's just an unbelievable wealth that I thoroughly enjoy working with. And obviously you do too, by saying what you just said. So
it takes a village.
It absolutely does. Very good. And then one last question here that someone else asked that in the chat, that was, do you have a favorite venue that you just, when you know you're going to get to go to that venue, you're really very happy about that?
Well, one of the things that I have really treasured, especially in the last 5-6 years, is opportunities we have had to collaborate with great orchestras around the country and to play at iconic venues. As much as I absolutely love those gymnasiums where you're right up with the people and you have a really community visceral experience, I'd be lying if I didn't say as a professional musician that the chance to play at Chicago Symphony Hall, Symphony Center, or Benaroya in Seattle, or Carnegie Hall, I really would love a chance to do that. And so in recent years, we have become more and more, it's become more and more common for us to partner with these great orchestras. So we've been sponsored on our tours by Chicago Symphony, by the Seattle Symphony, by Nashville Symphony, by the Houston Symphony. And as part of that, we get to go and play in their spaces. And, you know, I've been in the White House now in my career thousands of times, but to stand at Chicago Symphony Center and to play a concert on that iconic hall or Severance Hall, I actually have a picture of us in Severance in my little slideshow. That was pretty special. I mean, I just got a real kick out of that. And it's not even so much the way that it sounds, which is amazing. It's just like another place that you've been and you've been able to experience a stage or a venue where so many wonderful musicians have crossed its paths.
Absolutely. Well, I would like you to show a little bit of this before we get ready to close up this wonderful conversation we've had.
Sure.
Because some of these things, I'm sure the people would love to see some of your slides that you have.
All right, let me share my screen here. This was a slideshow that I put together for another presentation, but it's got some things that we've been talking about and some cute things as well. Let me see if this works for everybody. So share screen. Okay, can you see that? No, not yet. My share screen is somehow not working now. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, how about now?
Yes.
All right, so this is this is us at the White House. So this is typically where the chamber orchestra would be. It's a small orchestra of about 25 members. It fits perfectly in the grand foyer of the White House. The front doors to the house are right there to my left. And then on my right and on my left are the famous blue room doors with the presidential seal. The president typically comes out of that space. The orchestra is almost always the group that plays inside. If we had the concert band inside, we would blow the walls off the marble and we'd destroy the chandeliers. So that's one of the reasons the orchestra exists in the President's Own, is to play presidential events.
Sure.
So we were talking about Severance Hall. This is Severance Hall. So when we were in Cleveland a couple of years ago on tour, we had a chance to play at this wonderful venue in Cleveland. And that was a really incredible experience. Here is a picture of two sides of what I do. On the left is inauguration. You could tell because I have my mask on, which we kept on for the entire duration of that inauguration. And then on the right is just what it looks like when I'm on the podium during a concert.
That's a really cool shot.
Here's a picture of young Staff Sergeant Fettig. This is my very first promo picture when I was first got into the band. I was 21 years old when this picture was taken. I look like I'm about 16 and I had hair at one point, you can see. And then on the right is a picture from the George W. Bush administration. This was during a holiday reception, and this is the orchestra. And when I was an assistant director, I wore the red coat, still have hair there. It was a little later when I lost all my hair. And then this is the woman that you see here in the red dress is the former social secretary of the White House. So we took a picture during her last season before we finished up there. And then this is an interesting picture, and this is a little Souza story for you. This is the change of command ceremony when I took command from my predecessor, Colonel Mike Colburn, who's right now director of bands at Butler University. And when we do these ceremonies, we pass what we call the Souza baton. If you look carefully right in the middle where the commandant's there, you can see a gold baton with a little eagle on the top. When John Philip Souza left the Marine Band in 1892 to become rich and famous, his musicians in the Marine Band gave him this baton as a token of their esteem. And it was in the Souza family for years. Then it eventually came back to the Marine Band, and it's one of our most prized artifacts. It stays in a hermetically sealed box most of the time, but we pull it out once every blue moon. And when we exchange command of the band, we pass the baton literally from the old director to the new director. And then our historian comes running out on stage and grabs the baton with white gloves and puts it back in the box before we drop it and ruin this priceless artifact. Wow. So that was what happened there. I took the baton and immediately gave it back. Yeah. Here's a picture of the orchestra and the Navy Sea Chanters on the South Lawn of the White House. This was 4th of July a couple of years ago. We did a big TV presentation, set up a stage in front of the White House, and did a broadcast on the Hallmark Channel, which was really wonderful to take part in that. It was kind of unusual to have the orchestra outside in the summer, but that's what the president wanted, and it came off beautifully, I think, in the presentation. This is the Marine Band playing with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. When we were in Salt Lake City about 6 years ago, my second year as director, we had an invitation to do a broadcast, one of their daily broadcasts with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, which was an amazing opportunity. What a marvelous group they are. So sweet, excellent musicians, and being in the tabernacle when that tabernacle is all just plain white ceiling, and the organ you can't really even see very well. And then they turn on the lights for the broadcast, and it gets transformed into this magical place that you see here. And here's a picture of us doing our yearly celebration at Souza's grave, which is right down the street in Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. We conduct a ceremony on November 6th every year, rain or shine, on his birthday to commemorate his legacy and what it means to us. This is me with David Letterman. Michelle Obama invited us to be on the Letterman show for one of his last shows when she was a guest before the president and Mrs. Obama left office. And that was really cool that she invited us and get a chance to go to his studio.
Special.
Nice picture with President Bush and my predecessor, Mike Colburn, and Michelle Rockers, who was the first female assistant director of the band. She's now living in Europe and forging an extremely successful career. This is our last day with President Obama. We took the whole band over to say goodbye to him the day before the inauguration. And one more picture of me. This is my promotion to colonel, which was very graciously done by President Trump in the Roosevelt Room of the office. I'm the third director of the band to be promoted by the president to colonel. That's my wife, Lydia. She'd be horrified if she knew I was sharing a picture of her. Anyway, I know we're up against it. I just wanted to show you a few of those pictures. Just some interesting moments from my career.
Oh, Colonel Fettig, this has been such a joyful thing for ACB to get to have you all to ourselves for a short amount of time. And the photos were just fantastic. You are so on your path, and you're just so enjoyable to work with. I certainly appreciate you taking the time. And you know that the Marine Band is such a gift to America and to the world. And we are so glad to be something like it in regards to what we do for our communities and the people that we have in our bands, for the joy of playing our instruments, but also the joy of sharing our music. So I want to thank you wholeheartedly for everything. And I wish you I know you have a very busy week coming up. So we wish you a very pleasant rest of your day and just a wonderful time today. Thank you so very, very much.
Well, Gail, thank you for the conversation. A wonderful conversation. It's always nice to see you, at least virtually for now. I really enjoyed it. And I will say that the Marine Band is a gift. The Marine Band is a gift to the country. I feel incredibly blessed to just be a very small part of this history. And one of the things that's been the most amazing thing about this career for me is that I feel more a part of our community across the country. Because of my position and because of the opportunities I have, I feel closer to so many musicians across the country to be able to see them on a regular basis than I ever did prior to this. And I hope that that continues long after I'm out of this band and pass it on, because what a gift that is to know that we're all here doing what we love together in our different communities, and that we really are one big family in this band community. So thank you for allowing me to continue to be a part of that.
Well, thank you. So now I'd like to turn it back to our president-elect, Beth Steele. Thank you.
We're so glad you could join us for our conversation today. Many, many thanks to our special guest, Colonel Jason Fettig, for sharing with us today. I would also like to offer a special thanks to our president and moderator, Gail Brechting, and to the whole ACB Connects team. We hope you'll join us for our next session of ACB Connects on August 15th for a conversation with composer Johann de Meij. Concert band musicians are familiar with his many works, and it is certain to be a very interesting conversation. Please check the ACB website for more details, including registration information. We would like everyone to enjoy being a member of ACB. So membership dues now are half price for new members now through October 1st. If you or you have friends or bandmates who haven't yet joined, please take advantage of this promotion. Details are on the ACB website, and it's easy to join online. For the links mentioned today and to access previously recorded sections of ACB Connects, please visit our ACB website homepage at acbands.org. You'll also find information about becoming an ACB member, details on future sections of ACB Connects, and a wealth of resources. We'd also love to have you connect with us on Facebook, where you'll see informative and timely posts. Thank you for being with us today for this special opportunity to form new connections. We'll look forward to having you join us again on Sunday, August 15th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for the next session of ACB Connects. Until then, take care. Okay.